shine.
Bat an eyelash.
Good morning.
There are no hands on the clock
Why?
because they're not needed.
What time is it?
Fuck. You know, I don't remember that part. All right, let's just not nitpick over the passwords. This is Bob Ferguson. I was a part of the French 75.
Bitch, I felt like Tony Montana!
Steve Lockjaw just attacked my home. And I cannot remember, for the life of my only child, the answer to your question.
Maybe you should have studied the rebellion text a little harder.
I need to find my daughter.
Well, then call us back when you have the time.
You just...
Hello, and welcome back to the Mix video series for award season, Film Sound. Today we're here to talk about One Battle After Another, Warner Brothers film, director Paul Thomas Anderson. We're here with the sound team of Jose on production sound, Chris and Tony on the remix stage, the re-recording stage. This is a great, I'll confess at the beginning, I'm a fan. It's a movie that's meant to be seen in theaters. I happen to go in my favorite cinema, Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, and saw it in 70 millimeter in an afternoon. Just never stopped. Never was out of the movie. 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it moves. Jose, let's start with you, Jose, because this is location, almost fully, if I'm not mistaken. You're on the run. You're in outdoor scenes. You're all over Northern California. Can you just describe for me, when you look at a script like this, I better get my bag out because I'm going to be jumping into cars and on the run, or you're not sitting still with a cart here. So describe the locations, if you would.
Well, I mean, not only that, but we're carrying, this beast of a camera that is the VistaVision, that it's basically requires like 3 feet of space to place, and not quite sound friendly either. It's moving a lot of material. It flows horizontally and stuff, but from my end it was always we say drop the bag, in this case was securing the bag and restraining the bag, because if it felt like they were going fast, they were, and they were like slamming it. So I had to make sure not only that it didn't tumble, but it didn't, if anything went wrong, it didn't injure anybody, basically, mostly, it was like a lot of praying to the gods about, that everything kept rolling, and because I wasn't able to be there, most of the time there was a focus puller, and then there was Paul, that he loves to be inside with his actors. So there was no space for me. Generally, I could find a spot for the bag in the trunk, but not necessarily it was the case all the time, depending on the... But yeah, I mean, it was a non-stop adventure and, hard work of,
Well, particularly because I understand the director doesn't use ADR. I mean, that feels like a lot of pressure on you.
Rise and shine.
Bat an eyelash.
Good morning.
There are no hands on the clock
Why?
because they're not needed.
What time is it?
You know, I don't remember that part. All right, let's just not nitpick over the password stuff. Look, this is Bob Ferguson. All right, you just called my house. Let's cut the. I need the rendezvous point.
What time is it?
Look, Steve Lockjaw just attacked my home. I lost my daughter. This is Bob Ferguson. You understand?
Right.
I don't remember any more of this. I don't remember any more of this code speak. All right, let's just get on with what is the rendezvous point.
Leo, half the movie he's either chasing or being chased, it seems like. So you're picking that up from the set as well? Those breaths are from you?
Well, we used a lot. I would imagine, that the Chris and Tony ended up using mostly the radio mics, because in most of the situations, with the VistaVision, the boom had too much, of it. But I don't know, there may be programs now that are able to clean these things. I don't know, without...
Chris, do you want to describe the dialogue track? How does it come to you, and like that richness of voice? Because these are well-known actors.
What's it like here?
We would definitely use both mics whenever we could. We went in. So Rich Quinn, the dialogue editor and supervisor, was tasked early on. There were certain scenes where they were worried about intelligibility, so Rich got the tracks, went through, grabbed the best stuff, cleaned up the boom, cleaned up whatever he needed to, and we had this conversation where you got to clean it up, but it still has to sound natural. We don't want any, of the artifacting. And there are some new tools that definitely help, although, none of the tools are designed for camera noise anymore because most people don't shoot on film. So they don't really have to worry about that. But, you can kind of teach it things, and certain programs will work better for certain things. And, so Rich went through, started kind of getting the best of what he could. Whenever there's intelligibility issues, find an alternate take, maybe slip in a word from a different take. And then, he'd hand it over to me, and then I would kind of do my pass on it. And, the goal, like Jose was saying, it's like, the performances. I mean, Paul gets these incredible performances from these incredible actors, and, you want to keep that stuff. And ADR is tough. It comes, it usually happens months later in a sterile studio. It's not, like we want the stuff from the set. So that's always the goal, to keep that.
When you're on set, the chest feels different. There's a certain different type of resonance in there that they're, especially when they're moving so much. Now, it's funny when we talk a movie about this. It is dialogue. I mean, there is important dialogue in here because there are relationships. One of the things I like most about it was the movie has this sort of global scale. I mean, not just the way it's shot, but immigration and all these topics. And then it also comes down to very, very personal moments.
You're hungover and you got home at 3:00 in the morning. Where were you?
Or what? This isn't even warm, sweetie.
Where were you?
Where was I? I specifically told you where I was. You asked me that, I told you where I was. I was at the Rustic Inn with the old band. You remember our old band, right? The old band, sweetie, a block past Normal. You remember Albert?
Yeah.
Turns out Albert bought all this old equipment from Steely Dan's old studio to try to get that sort of vintage, that sort of crackling tube sound. You don't need any of that stuff anymore. He brought out a computer program, boom, with a press of a button.
How'd you get home?
What do you mean?
How did you get home?
Well, with my car.
You drove?
So what are you, my babysitter? What?
Yeah.
I know how to drink and drive, honey. I know what I'm doing. I didn't
Dad.
have that much. What? What?
I don't want to be your babysitter. I don't want to worry if you wrapped your car around a telephone pole.
Well, I didn't wrap my...
I didn't ask for this. That's just how the cards were rolled out for me.
It's dice, sweetie.
What?
It's not cards. You don't roll cards. It's dice.
Fuck off, Bob. Just fuck off with that, okay? Grow up.
I've worked with Paul for, over 20 years. So I know his aesthetic sometimes isn't always kind of going with fully cinematic, immersive sound. So I watched the first 70 minutes with him and Andy, and the first question I had was, how big can we go?
Yeah.
Are you, I know you like the tracks that seem gritty and, production forward, but I think, this warrants they kind of going for it. And he's like, yeah, we should try it. And then it was like, well, what about the format? Should we go with Atmos? And he's never mixed in Atmos. And it's like, let's try it. So basically I said, let me do the first 15 minutes. I'll send it to you and I'll mix it the way I think it should be done. And then it'll kind of inform us for the rest of the movie. And, guys, fortunately, some of the team members, I got Rich Quinn, myself, and Jeremy Millard was the assistant, and Justin Doyle, the sound effects editor, and we just kind of went for it, and I showed it to him, and he was like, "This is great," and I was like, "All right, well, this is how we're going." Go.
And Tony, in that scene. Well, we learn about Rocket, and later he's Rocket Man. It ends with explosions, but there's you're on the ground, chaos, background noises. You don't know if a firefight's going to break out or not.
Sure.
Talk to me about that scene.
I mean, that whole opening scene is it's big and it's sprawling and it's full of music and it's full of sound effects and it is really dense and big and it's a great opportunity to introduce like the big scale of the film. You know what I mean? So Paul knew that we were mixing in Atmos and that there was going to be a big IMAX release, and he really wanted to like kind of push it to the next level with sound, and we did that. We have like, you know, objects with sound effects, and we got surrounds, we got overheads. So we're kind of trying to bring it all to the table, but like do it in a tasteful way that like is big, but also not overwhelming. And we're trying to do it in a tasteful way that kind of supports the scale of things. Yeah.
Well, it also, it sort of Atmos lends itself to chaos. You know, you can sort of depict chaos. You know, you have room to it. It's nothing if not chaotic. The word battles in the title. I mean, things like this. But and then it comes down to the intimacy. When it comes down to Perfidia and Lockjaw, did sounds disappear? I mean, how do you establish intimacy after a battle, right? So soon.
Yeah, you just kind of have to go through the elements and find what's going to do that. I think we do that, you know, a bunch of times in the movie. Like one that comes to mind is after the heist that's gone wrong and the car chase. There are these overhead shots of the helicopter looking down at Perfidia as she's running, and it's full Atmos. It's like objects for like the helicopter, and it surrounds, and it's huge and it's big. It's subwoofer. And then it cuts down to Perfidia being arrested on the ground. Yeah. And it's just like mono. It's just like her scream. And like we do that a lot of times where we're really pushing it to the limit and then getting really intimate. Like another moment is when she's pregnant, shooting the gun. Like it's very quiet. They're sitting there drinking beers. And then, you know, so like we're trying to like find that dynamic and that contrast and have it be effective and tasteful, and you know, have the audience connect to it on a
tasteful.
Well, you know,
there's an element of grit to it all. You know, I respect what you're saying. Like, you know, it's like I think, you know, I mean, I've worked on movies where Paul is like nothing in the surrounds, and this was an opportunity where he was definitely willing to go for it. And like, you know, where they were being held down, that he's like, that's like the belly of the beast. That's like, this is like loud and gnarly. We got these semis going by 24 hours a day. You're right at the border wall, you know, like make that really gnarly. And then, you know, we go inside with Lockjaw and Perfidia, and, you know, we want to have some activity, but it's really about boom, them and that. And their moment.
In their moment. They have another moment later, but we won't spoil that. And we go, there's not a hard cut, but we go from revolutionary to, it says 16 years later. But it doesn't feel at all like we're introduced to a new movie. I mean, it almost feels like that the establishment of the revolutionary has just got maybe a little quieter in the cabin when he goes there. But from that point on, we're on the run. It never lets up in a way. Lockjaw returns 16 years later. Spoiler alert. But and that's real. And that's is there any approach that you took to the two eras? Is there any, or did you just think of it as one movie?
I mean, we didn't necessarily think of it in that way as two eras. It was more about like a kind of opening montage-y, you know, flashback, but really, you know, steeping us in the kind of reality of it all. And then, you know, coming back to the current day, it was just more like, you know, Bob's up there in the redwoods, and it was, you know, just like a different environment. Yeah, he's trying to escape all that. And now we're in this kind of bucolic, you know, kind of forgotten about place to a certain degree, where he's just trying to live his life and, you know, smoke his weed. And
that's a good way of putting it, because it's almost like we know he's hiding out, but it doesn't feel like he's hiding out. It just feels like he's in a cabin in a way. Jose, you switched to that. Can you talk to me about the cabin? Because there are some key moments that take place in there with his daughter. I mean, we see him smoking a lot of weed and everything, but you're not in the great outdoors anymore, the expansiveness of this division. You're brought into the cabin. That environment, Jose, where did you shot that in a cabin?
And this side, I mean, minimal. Nobody could be there except the camera and the actors and Paul.
Okay.
And then, it was raining like hell. That was tough. Luckily, I found a little room that used to be like a storage. And that's where, me and a bunch of others hid from the rain and the elements, because it was a little brutal, all that. But yeah, I mean, it was like a magical place, actually. It was right in the middle of the redwoods. It took half an hour to get there. And I don't know, just the whole atmosphere that Paul tends to create around, the scenes. It's always looking, always, how can we improve this? It's all about the movie for him. And
did you take the opportunity to record ambience and things for Chris later?
Not too many, because they were basically, I was very packed with my sound card inside this place, and then the phone call. All the phone calls that we did were live, except for that one in the cabin. He would bring the actors to perform the phone call in some other space, but all the phone calls were there, but except that one that the actors couldn't come, so we had to install a telephone line, and good old style telephone line, and then I had to coordinate all that with happening.
This is the moment. I mean, I love the cabin scenes, especially when the boyfriend comes up and all this. And but we sort of established some of the. It is comedic in certain aspects. I mean, am I wrong? Because not just the naming conventions of the groups and everything, or the fun you have names. There's some funny scenes in that when he when he explodes with his paranoia, and some of that starts to come out. Chris and Tony, can you talk about weaving a comedic element, I should say? It's not a comedy by any means, but playing with those. It's a very real world. These are very serious issues addressed in the movie, and yet I burst out laughing at times. How does that work in a mix? Tony, you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, I think to some extent it is a comedy. I don't think, it shies away from the comedy in these like really tense, chaotic environments.
Yeah.
And just mix wise, I think, sound effects wise, it's about like finding the times that you're going to be effective. Like there are definitely times you want to get out of the way of the dialogue, get out of the way of the comedy and the acting, and just be like underscore and play a supportive role to that. But there are times when, like we were talking about earlier, like there is a little more scale and it kind of shifts gears from being a comedy to being a bit of an action movie. And then we can kind of, get into, the big music and the big sound.
Not just that, I mean, not just serious, but I think there's going to be a lot of America's first view of like what an immigration camp could actually be and how awful that location is versus the security of the cabin.
I'm a Californian, and so I've been up and down the state, and I've recorded all over the place. So I had, I know what those places sound like, and so it's fun to kind of to build that, knowing that he's going to get run out, and then it's just going to turn into chaos, and there's going to be, he's on the street. And he's on the phone with Josh trying to figure out the password. I mean, it's hilarious. and so again, there's cops going by, there's sirens, and kind of building that thing. And he's looking, he's paranoid. So you kind of find the moments where like everything's very calm. He thinks he's got it all worked out. He's hanging out watching Battle of Algiers, and then next thing you know, he's freaking out in his robe, trying to get away, and like when he gets gassed out of his cabin. I mean, I thought like him coughing when he is running, that performance alone's insane. Like my throat hurt listening to that.
Liam does that. That's one of the reasons I'm so interested. It's very rare that I walk away from a movie and think man, his breathing was great, you know, but he's on the run in parts. He has this sort of wide-eyed innocence, and yet he's on the run and he's breathing. When he comes in, I mean, one of my favorite scenes, Jose, maybe let's introduce Sensei, the Benicio del Toro character. When he comes into it's not a gym. What is that in downtown Eureka?
Dojo.
Dojo. There's some comedy in there. It's almost a safe haven. This character brings, I would calm amid chaos. That's what Sensei brings. He's funny. Jose, right when we start that scene in the dojo when he's going to, evacuate some.
Ocean waves.
Ocean waves. There you go. Tell me about it. I mean, he's moving in that dojo. You go into the hallway, you go down the back door, you're jumping up on roofs. Yeah. What was that like?
That scene in particular? Well, I mean, it's like the introduction of him, and it is, I think he's such a brilliant actor. I mean, the choices he makes are really thought out, but they're also very, very smart and funny. Ocean waves, we start calling each other when we were stressed, ocean waves, And I think, when they arrest him, that's another brilliant choice of his. He's just, he just immersed himself in that character, and he did brought a lot of, peace on the cows.
What's the tracer calls? What's the plan? BG, what's the plan? I'm thinking. Is that my weapon? Hang on. What's the plan? We gotta go, man. We gotta go.
I'm gonna take him up on the roof, across to my car on Laughlin's Alley. Here are my keys. You drop them off, you call me. Latino Heat, come with me.
No, man, I'm not going with them. No, I'm not going with them. I'm supposed to go with you. I need you, brother. Please, Sensei, please.
Courage, Bob. Courage.
That's it. Courage. Yeah. Thank you. Hey, thank you, Sensei. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you. God damn it! Viva la revolution!
In a sense, it's an escape scene too. I mean, Chris and Tony. I mean, it moves from the comic element of him hiding down below the window when the police come by. It's cracking me up too. And he's scurrying along the floor. And then you have families being moved out at the center of his Benicio. Tony, Chris, can you talk me through that scene? It moves. It really moves when he comes for help.
Tony,
you want to start that?
Yeah, I mean, it does. That's the rag piano key, right? So, I mean, a big part of that is that, Johnny's music cue there with the rag piano. And I don't know, I just feel like it was tough to kind of, not tough, but, it was a task to kind of keep every note of the piano going and legible. And Paul knew every single note. You know what I mean? He's so dialed into every detail of everything that he knew every note. And we wanted to keep that going, but also bring in the sound effects because there's a lot there. He steals the car. He finally gets to the top and he takes his little shot before he gets shot. So there's a lot of action in that, but there's also kind of a delicate balance there to strike with keeping the score legible and kind of driving.
And Chris, pacing's important at this point because you can't have a chase movie for 2 hours. So in a scene like that, you're building, you're going into the hallway with the families, you're going up on roofs, talk to me about sort of how you help establish that so you're not just one great wash.
Yeah. Well, Sensei is always, all hell's breaking loose outside, but we didn't want to fully lean into it while he's on the phone trying to figure out the password. And then, Sensei calmly comes in and he's like, time to go. And so things start getting more active. We start hearing more what's going outside. And then, we have all these families who are trying to escape. And so as much of the production audio that we could grab of, the families moving and talking and, the kids are crying and, there's some great stuff in there. And so finding all those bits that anything that could add to that kind of the calm and chaos. It's like they've clearly like trained for this to a certain degree. Like Sensei knows like this is something we got to just do from time to time. And, you know, this is how we do it. And but then you have kids who are just like, what's going on? And so like really trying to just take as much of the real audio from the day and kind of get that in there. And, you know, the grittiness of them going down to the tunnel. And then, you know, when we cut to the military guys, you know, they're kind of like these ninjas. So things get quieter. You hear a little bit of movement. Like when they break into, Bob's place, just going back a little bit, like, you know, that was like an early request. And so we shot Foley early for that. And we had a whole setup of like big boots and, you know, and then we were in the mix, you know, Paul's like, well, what if, you know, these guys are kind of like ninjas? Like, what if we kind of take that approach where they come in and so then, you know, Tony mixed that where it was like it was almost scarier because it was like, damn, these are big dudes with all this gear, but they're barely making a sound, you know. We get, you know, the glass underneath the wood and like little things like that. Lockjaw comes in, we make a big impact there, but then then as his forces come in, they're like, you know, very quiet and stealth. So that was so yeah, always kind of trying to get as much kind of dynamics and anything to like add to the kind of stress the movie. I mean, as funny as it is, it's also really stressful, you know, like this thing is just like one stress after another. Pardon that. Sorry for the lame pun there.
That's going to be the Weird Al Yankovic song for it. Yeah, that'll be his.
I'll let him work on that.
Well, speaking of stress, I mean, one of my favorite scenes, and the critics talk about everything, is the car chase at the end. I mean, usually we get a car chase through city streets, tons of squealing tires, engines revving. This is one of the most tense car chases I've seen. The way he shot it, you know, coming up and over the hills. It's almost like a slow motion car chase, but terrifying. This 16-year-old girl's being chased by a bad man. Jose, is there anything from production? What are you doing there in production first? And then Chris and Tony, walk me through that brilliant car chase scene. So,
well, that was like a week's worth of work. And, you know, the many days were, you know, very difficult for me to even get involved. But, for example, there was a day that the three cars that were involved in that, they were set off to go at the same time. So it was like three bags, basically. But, you know, like on those long lenses on the arm, you know, that one was mostly steel from other, you know, or try to plant something. Sometimes we would go hide and put a mic out there to just get the cars driving by.
Get what you can.
Or we would mic the cars. That was the other. We had a bunch of stun mics, we called them, and, you know, they came useful sometimes, I think, you know.
Good. But, Chris, you go first then. Take me through this scene, because it's not a lot of dialogue. There's breathing and everything, but there's fear. I mean, their fear is evident. The
whole thing, like, as we were working on the whole sequence. And, I never wanted to lose sight. The whole point of the chase is for Bob and Willa to be reunited. So, kind of everything needs to kind of be in service of that. And props to Jose, because we had a conversation. When I read the script, 2 years ago, it was, I knew there was going to be a lot of cars. So we start the every time I always try and get anything we can do to record these cars on set, because you got the cars, you got the drivers, but I know it's very difficult to get that done. But, I was like, even if it's going to be crap, at least as a reference, a decent reference. And, the Bob's car is completely from production. So, I mean, that car, it personifies that character.
Yes,
to get to try and mimic that car, the way that it's being driven, there's almost no way. So that was huge to be able to have that, because the Charger and the Mustang, we definitely have, we can do that kind of stuff. And we got some good stuff from the Mustang too. But Bob's car was key to have that. So having that was really kind of informed that chase for Bob. So that was awesome to have that. And then it was just, it is like you were saying, it's almost like an opposite car chase.
Yeah.
Most car chases are fast. There's quick cuts, acceleration, skid, deceleration, and it's all quick cut. This is completely opposite, where it's just long shots. So you have to find ways to keep it sonic interesting, something interesting sonically, because cars can they top out after a while. We stretch and pull and try and get as long accelerations as we can, but at a certain point, cars kind of top out, right? And a lot of them, the shifting, the gear shifting on automatic, happens oftentimes at a time when you don't want it to, right?
Yeah.
So we definitely spent a lot of time building out the cars and introducing the road as a character, right? Like the road plays a big part. I mean, the road is definitely defines that scene. So wanted to give that a sonic signature and make it kind of eerie. And then, then the little things of rattles and wind coming through the window, and we're outside, road noise, sound designing road noise, and just kind of building it. And we just spent a lot of time going through it.
Well, thank God they weren't electric cars. At least they use muscle cars,
Exactly.
You don't have much to play with, Tony, right? I mean, you have engine. You might have, cars with character have a little stutter when they're doing a gear shift or something.
Sure.
You're playing with tires on a road in a straightaway and engine sounds.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of what makes it so interesting and kind of effective. It's not that big dynamic chase scene that you get at the end of the movie. It's about tension.
Yeah.
Right? And it's about anxiety. And sometimes you don't need to be overtly big to help support the fact that she's looking at the mirror behind her, for a big portion of it. So like Chris was saying, it just took a long time to kind of find the right elements that were going to help create tension and help create anxiety, and ultimately kind of help it move to where it gets, because it starts kind of, like the whole movie does, it'll be big and it'll be small, and it starts kind of small and then it moves, and ultimately it's ends up being pretty big with engines that are going 7,000 RPMs, and then, ultimately a huge crash. So I mean, it's a different kind of scene, but it moves. It really moves.
It's so unique in the car chase pantheon, in that it's at one point it almost feels like they're going slow, but they're not going slow. It almost feels like a couple Zamboni machines, and yet this is a chase. I kept thinking, don't catch up to her, don't catch up to her. It's brilliantly done. And I think that has to do with the scope of the vision too, the Vista vision. I mean, I think those choices, speaking of choices, I'm going to leave you with we have time for one last question. But in a movie like this, when you're epic and you bring it down to scale, the choices of a single sound make a huge difference. Am I right? In a sense. So do you look for that detail in Foley? Do you look for it in effects, sometimes music? What about choices of this film? I mean, in general. Jose, I'll start with you because you are limited, and sometimes you have to make choices what you can get, even. So talk to me about choices made in this film.
Choices. I don't really get your question. Choices.
I mean, it's certainly like when you're saying
that I need to pick, or
yeah, sort of how not how you pick, but how you cover. Like if you can't cover the whole car, you're making choices. If you're stuck in a closet in the cabin,
mm-hmm.
Can you cover everything? I mean, this doesn't seem like a movie where you get a chance of full coverage. So
we tried to. I mean, I think we did pretty good with that. I mean, the hardest thing was practical locations. Hiding, basically.
Hiding, yeah. Okay.
I became very good at hiding. But
very, very good. I just think I would not have guessed that there's no ADR in this. The production track is brilliant. I mean,
thank you.
Tony, let's move to you. I mean, some choices in the effects track. Did you ever find yourself pulling back? Did you ever find yourself amping it up and where it felt right?
I mean, of course. I think we're doing that constantly, throughout the whole film, and it's part of like the dynamics of the whole film. And Paul's got a really he's super stylish, right? And he's got like a very specific style that is like very production-y. It's very like organic. It's very like 70s, and part of my job is to, make sure you're staying true to that and staying true to the style, but also being articulate and clear in the mixing. Just because, the style, it's kind of like his style is kind of punk rock. It's kind of junky almost, for the lack of a better word, but like you don't want the mix to be like that. You want the mix to still be like clear and concise and articulate. So, I think that was a big part of what I was trying to do on my end there.
And Chris, you're sort of bringing it all together here. You have pacing, tone, things like this, but choices in some of the scenes.
I mean, dialogue is always so important for Paul's movies. I mean, all the sound, all the sonic departments always play such a big role, and dialogue should always, intelligibility is such a big part of it. And there's a time where things should sound kind of nastier, and times like the first time we meet the Christmas adventurers, like it sounds like it's nice and quiet. It's almost like a hermetically sealed room. Like the voices sound nice and full and rich, and like these are these entitled people, whatever. And then then we're on the street with Somerville, and things are just kind of gnarly and gritty. Like we had the like Paul insisted that we recorded the Somerville rant through a shortwave radio, and that was a real. That was a whole thing, and it's hard to get good sound on a shortwave radio. And the fact that the words that were being said are somewhat inflammatory, and these are on public airways, you got kind of got to be careful. But these are all important things, and you kind of just have to go after it because Paul is very specific about certain things, and like in The Chase, there was. Music was going through the whole thing, and in our many passes of trying to get that to be the right thing, we Justin probably cut 3 different cars for different motors for the Charger and the Mustang, and then the music is like, well, what if we take the music out here and then bring it back here, just to kind of, and so it is a very collaborative thing, and it's like, and that's kind of the beauty of the mix is that, everybody's in the same room, and, there's no kind of like hiding behind anything. It's like, you're making the movie at this point. This is it. Like, this is the last phase of what happens. And it's you try and find all the right elements that lead to the climax and the what makes it cinematic. And one of the things Paul mentioned too is let's make the screen as big as possible. And, so all these choices, everyone has input, and we, it's just a really gratifying thing to be able to do.
And I asked that, I think that's well spoken. I asked that because one of the very first things I learned when writing about film sound back in the early 90s was this dance in the weave between effects and music, particularly with dialogue always at the center. But I feel like this movie, it has that established dialogue and that dance in the weave between effects. The choices made.
Beautiful.
Every scene, it was right. It felt right. It felt natural.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And Tony, I'm going to steal that line. I like the fact that his soundtrack's a little punk rock. I think that's a great. He's a little. Paul Thomas Anderson is a little punk rock. All right. Thank you for joining me, gentlemen. Brilliant movie.
Thank you.
Please, if you get a chance, go see this in theaters. You got to take it on the big screen. He shot it that way. The sound fits it that way. Brilliantly done. Good luck in award season, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.